As you'll have seen from the title and the thumbnail of the video, I'm approaching this review as a brand new player in the Moto GP series. I've owned older games in the series before, but never actually gotten around to playing them, so this is a different perspective to a lot of other reviews which are being featured on YouTube, so I'm going to split this review into two primary parts. The first part is, for those who have played it before, what are some of the notable changes, improvements, etc., which this one has over the previous games, and then of course the follow-up to that in the video is my experience as a first-time player. And if you're in the same boat or similar boat to me, maybe you've enjoyed stuff like Tourist Trophy, the Ride series, etc., then how will it appeal to you, if at all, and what should you expect from the game if you do decide to buy it? So first of all, let's talk changes. There are some significant improvements and changes in the game compared to apparently the previous versions. The graphics engine itself is improved, it's powered by Unreal 5, the audio is recorded at actual events, so it's much more realistic and has that much more rich experience to it. It has a multi-step career with 7 different driving modes and about 6 different types of actual racing. Moto GP, of course, Moto 2, Moto 3, flat track, motard, and even mini bikes as well. And aside from the improvements in graphics, etc., the single most notable change about this game, which they've never had before, is funnily enough the thing which I have the biggest hard time with, and that is that they've introduced arcade settings in addition to Pro. So as you would assume in most games these days, you can of course select stuff like traction control, ABS, simulation versus arcade steering. You can have cornering assist in the case of something like Forza, for example, maybe a braking line indicator, as you'll see here in the video for the most part. In most games which have those kind of features, you can toggle them on or off as you go and it will change, the kind of bonus you get from a race, that kind of stuff. With a game like this, of course, as with a Formula 1 game and various other really focused in specific motorsport based titles, you don't tend to need stuff like race bonuses in that traditional sense, because it's not like you're collecting a whole swath of vehicles. These games are about the racing, not about collecting vehicles. It's a totally different kind of experience to your TDUs, Forzas, Gran Turismos. And in my opinion, that works in this case both to its favour, most definitely for certain types of player, and secondly, maybe not so much. And where it's not so much is ironically, given the people behind it, Milestone, the same people who create the Ride series, which is really where things get strange to me. It's that arcade mode, that new addition, which is ironically designed to bring newer players into the game and allow them to feel like it's not too daunting to get into, which kind of hamstrings it. Because for me, when I first started riding, this was set on as standard. I could not at the time, because I jumped basically straight into career mode. I selected the team I wanted to go with, went out to do some track testing, and then I was immediately kind of shocked by just how bad the bike felt. And I wasn't expecting to be, up with the pace of other bikes on the grid. What was the issue is that the bike handled in an absolutely horrendous way. It turned like a planet. The brakes honestly felt like they worked half the time, if that, and in fact, you will see me here slamming on the front and rear brakes sometimes simultaneously, and the bike just does not slow down at all. It would seem you go straight off the track, even when I'm clearly braking at the points when the game is indicating that you should. Now, my first thought was maybe I'm just pressing the wrong button, so I double checked the controller layout, and it didn't seem that was the case. My second thought was maybe that since it's a more simulation-based professional approach to a game, I needed to jump into, of course, the settings and change stuff like dead zone and responsiveness and all the kind of stuff that you would get into in something like Assetto Corsa or Project Cars if you're setting up a steering wheel, for example. Those didn't really make too much of a change either. Maybe a slight improvement on braking, certainly not much. It made it better some of the time. So I thought, you know what, clearly I've jumped into the wrong part of the game, let's dive back out into the main menu and look for more of a tutorial or a training school, because I noticed that was part of the game, so I jumped in there instead. I was able to change it to Pro settings, and it did make a huge difference. And to me, this is where the game is at its best, which is not surprising in the slightest. That's the whole point of the game. Again, just like a Grand Prix game. Where the game felt extremely heavy, the bike had next to no responsiveness, there was no wheel spin, no wheelie inclination at all. The bike felt like it was totally on flypaper, cornering on rails, but to the nth degree, to a horrendous degree. It felt more like you were driving a car almost. There was such a lack of emotion. In comparison to that, now it's super twitchy. Braking, it starts to get really squirrely if you dive into a corner too much. Very easy to fall off, as doubtless you'll see me doing a few times, but that didn't bother me at all, because that is what I was expecting from the game. Even though I didn't like the aspect of the game, which ironically was supposed to be exactly like People 4 Me, people who haven't played before, who just want to start to get the vibe of the game. The part of the game which was less forgiving, although I made plenty of mistakes, definitely felt immediately better to use. Now, the reason why I personally view that as a problem is because if someone like me, who literally here on the channel plays dozens upon dozens of different games, varying wildly in skill level, age, console, and requirement of, player age and experience, well, if even someone like me is looking through settings trying to figure out what's wrong in the supposedly arcade mode, beginner-friendly approach, that doesn't really bode too well to other people who maybe don't know to look in menus for stuff like that, who might immediately be really put off of the experience because it just feels awful. And that to me is something which definitely needs addressing in a future game. If they decide, let's say for example for Moto GP 26 or whatever, to keep the aspect of amateur mode or, arcade mode, which I'm sure they probably would, they need to restructure how it actually feels, because you could end up putting off more people, ironically, in the exact kind of group that you're trying to get into the game. Now, to jump back over to the point of stuff which the game offers, you will again see here in the video the track layouts, some really, really cool circuits, some tracks which I actually haven't had the chance to drive on or ride on in other tracks before, so that was very fun to see. The graphics to me are great. The physics, especially in that pro mode, really do feel what I would expect. Probably a little more twitchy than I would be expecting, but again, this is F1 level in motorcycle form, so you would want it to be a challenge. There's a reason why these are the best riders in the world, so yeah, I have no issue with that. You also have, of course, penalties, punishments, race stewards, etc., checking your speed in the pit lanes, all that kind of stuff. And one of the things which I did like about the game, which ties in again to something I said earlier on, is this is not the same kind of approach that many of us, myself included, tend to gravitate towards. I am very much so the kind of person who likes collecting vehicles, riding or driving vehicles, tuning them up, and just enjoying driving. And then the racing is just a means to an end. This is the total opposite end of the spectrum. The career mode actually lends itself to that as well, because you have this drawn out process where you can do like an hour of testing and then fine tune the bike and do stuff like talking to your pit crew and like relationships between teams, and you can annoy people, you can ingratiate yourself with people, you can even choose how you want to progress through career mode in terms of, do you want to pursue rivalries in particular, do you want to pursue getting a better contract, do you want to pursue more of a reputation score, and as I said, you can adjust your bike throughout the season, throughout the championship, all of the kind of good stuff that a pro level seasoned player for the series will, of course, I would assume, expect to be in there. In terms of a multiplayer, you can 1v1 in offline mode, and you can play with up to 12 people online. It's available incidentally on both physical and digital forms. I had the digital version on the PS5 in particular. It's on PS5, of course, PS4, Xbox One, the Series S and the Series X, Steam, the Nintendo Switch, and Epic Games. And in terms of other changes and interesting bits and bobs throughout the game, I already alluded to the fact that you've got the Academy, the tutorial mode, which is definitely an improvement for getting you into it. The sector time trial based learning method, which I jumped into, and again you'll see some of that here in the review, reminded me very much of the circuit experiences in Gran Turismo, for example, where you'd have a full lap at the end and then it would be broken down into different sectors. Definitely a lot more challenging than Gran Turismo, at least on the pro difficulty, but again, you would expect and hope for as much. The game does come with adaptive difficulty as well, which I would be a bit mixed on that. I think that has a place, but you'd have to be very careful with how that's implemented into the game, because if you jump into a game and it detects that, okay, you're a seasoned player, and then immediately ramps up the AI to kind of, again, like a Gran Turismo Sophie level where even the pro drivers were having trouble keeping up with it, well, like I said, you'd have to really rein that in. And speaking of stuff like AI, another aspect of the game which I'm not quite sold on is the kind of neural interface or neural support, which I didn't fully get into, but I'm sure others have spoken about it, and it can't be the only game to feature this, I would imagine, certainly not moving forward, where it kind of tries to anticipate what you want to do. That could come up with some issues in terms of the handling and braking, etc., which maybe I came across. I'm not sure. I don't believe I had it turned on anyway, and again, you'll probably see that on screen at some point in the video. The final thing, which is pretty cool, very Forza style, is the accessibility options. You can adjust it based on color blindness, you can slow down the game speed, you can even play in one-handed mode on a controller, and you can adjust it for tinnitus if you suffer from that as well. So pretty cool in terms of who can access the game and who can enjoy it, which is ironic given that you've got all of this focus on getting people into the game, and then the one thing, that amateur mode, if you will, that gets people into the game is probably the single biggest roadblock to enjoying the rest of it, which it really is like ass backwards in that regard. My overall thoughts on this one, to really condense them down to who should or shouldn't consider buying it and who will or won't enjoy it, is if you've never played any motorcycle games before, I would definitely not recommend decide that this is your first one, definitely try Ride first. It's still current gen, you can play the older ones easily enough. I actually have all of the Ride games downloaded on PS5, so you only need one console to play the entire library, including the offshoots like Ducati. So get into that first, that's much more forgiving. This is from the same people anyway, but turned up to the nth degree. And then once you enjoy those and get into it, then perhaps move into something like this. In a very similar way to how I would say, Gran Turismo or Forza are much broader in their scope and their appeal and their entry point, if you will. And then if you find that it's not challenging enough for you, not realistic enough for you, or you just want that extra something, then you could go for AC or Project Cars or whatever else. This is very much that kind of occasion. In Pro mode, you'll get a lot out of the game, and if you are a fan of really professional, self-serious racing, which demands focus, you have to respect the bike, even in terms of, how hard you squeeze the brakes and stuff like that, which is exactly what you would want, then yeah, you're going to love this game. The graphics are great, the sound is great, and I would say that the physics are really good as well. You can definitely feel that Ride DNA in there, but as I said, turned up to 11. That's it for my thoughts though on who I believe would enjoy the game and who should check it out, and of course, stick around on the channel for more reviews in future. But for now, thanks for watching.